Hi, everyone. We're so glad to have you with us here today. I'm going to give everyone just a quick moment to get connected with us. And in the meantime, we would love it if you would put your name, where you're located, what organization you're with in the chat so we could say hi and see where everyone is today. And we'll just give everyone a couple moments to join as they might be transitioning on from a different meeting. And I did just want to let everyone know that if you want captions, those are available today. So feel free to turn those on if you prefer. All right. For those of you who joined, if you want to just put where you're from and what organization you're with in the chat, we would love to say hi. But we're going to go ahead and get started today. So welcome to Veritas Group's webinar, Fundraising Hacks to Help You at Year End. I'm Rebecca Huron, the Director of Content Marketing and Learning here at Veritas. And I'll be working behind the scenes to help as Jeff and Kendra are presenting today. But before I pass it on to them to do introductions and get us started, I wanted to just walk you through our webinar system. So just because of the number of participants we have today, we're not able to take your questions out loud, but your questions are very important to us. And it is super helpful to me if you will put any questions you'd like us to answer either directly to you or at the end when we do questions in the Q&A box. And if you're not seeing the Q&A box, it might be under the More section in your toolbar at the bottom. So take a look at that and make sure that you have that up so that you can put any questions that come up over the course of the presentation in there, and we'll take the majority of the questions at the end. If you have any comments or want to share thoughts or anything like that during the course of the webinar, feel free to use the chat function. We love for you to do that too, but it is hard to keep track of questions there. So if you could put questions in the Q&A box, that will be perfect. And then I did also want to let you know that we will be sending out a recording and a copy of the slide deck to everyone who registered tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that email. And feel free to share this with any colleagues or friends as well once that comes through. And with that, I will pass it on to Jeff.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca. Hey, everyone. So glad you're with us. I'm Jeff Schreifels, and I'm principal and owner of Veritas Group. And I've been doing this a long time. So some of these hacks are just from things that we've learned over the years, especially over the last 15 years here at Veritas, that can really help you. So we're excited. I'm excited too, because tomorrow I'm flying to Lambeau Field in Green Bay. As you saw that thing where my son and I have gone to almost every MLB game. Well, another big thing of his is to go to Lambeau Field, and this weekend I'm getting to do that. So I'm excited about that. Kendra, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. That sounds so fun. I wish I was going with you. It sounds like the weather's
I know.
great. So, hi everyone. My name is Kendra Loper. I am the Director of Client Services at Veritas Group. I have really been a frontline fundraiser and a manager of teams of fundraisers. So I know all the things that you're feeling this time of year. It's crunch time. There's a lot going on for all of you. So I know you're interested in hearing about how you can really be more efficient with your time. So really happy to be here with you today.
So we've worked really hard to ground our approach in objective fact, not just our personal opinion, and we formed our recommendations through insights from analysis of millions of donor records and worked with thousands of fundraisers. So that is really what forms our strategy. We've looked at so many donor records. We've been in so many different situations, worked with hundreds of organizations to help bring that knowledge to you over the years. So today is all about being able to bring that to you from all the different people that we've worked with, the hundreds and thousands of people that have taken our courses, so that we can give you the best advice that we can pass on to you from all that we've learned. Now, here's some of the folks we've partnered with, and we've gotten to work with some pretty phenomenal organizations over the years who've helped us learn and develop our strategy and approach.
All right. So, we're here to talk about efficiency, right? And the hacks and how you do this. We surveyed our team, and we've got an incredible team that, have been exactly where you are, just like me. And, one of the things that kept coming up over and over was the need to find your own rhythm, right? It's just about what works for you, and what works for me won't necessarily work for you, and vice versa. So first, it's really important to identify if you are in a cycle that's causing you to be less efficient. Are there some common signs that you aren't operating from a productive place in your work? Like, do you feel overwhelmed by your task list and unsure how to get that under control? Raise your hand. That's me, right? You feel like you can't move things forward unless it's perfect. Or there has to be a better way. How many of us have said that to ourselves? There has to be a better way to get through all of these tasks and make sure I can prioritize the right things at the right time. And your time, how many times does this happen? It gets taken up with tasks that are important, but they're maybe not the most important for you to do right then. It feels like maybe it's the most urgent, the tyranny of the urgent, right? And so your best work times, do you know when your best work times are during the day? What's your most, efficient time of the day where you get the best work done? And is that time getting filled up with other meetings that really don't maximize your energy and the way in which you work? Are you aware of that?
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Now, when you get into a cycle of inefficiency, it can cause things to get even more overwhelming because then your tasks start piling up. And that's why it's important to get clear on what helps you be most efficient and do what you can to create that structure in your work. What we often forget to think about is our personality has a huge impact on how we're productive. Different people get their energy filled by different situations, or there may be certain tasks that are just harder for you. Take stock of this today. When do you feel low energy? What tasks are particularly draining to you or require the most energy? Are there certain tasks that you really need to be in the right headspace to do? What do you need to do to get there? We could go into all sorts of personality tips, but for today, we're going to speak specifically to being more introverted and more extroverted. Here are some strategies for those of you who tend to be more introverted that can help you stay on top of your to-do list, like focusing on completing your calls list before your energy gets sapped. Be in recharge time if you have a lot of calls and meetings. And when you have more intense or emotionally draining calls, acknowledge that and investigate that. And for those who are extroverted, like me, these are tips that can support your work. Celebrate calls quickly, and then channel your energy forward. And then don't neglect to adjust your notes and take a moment to tweak those things before your next call, because you tend to want to rush right into the next thing.
That's right. And Jeff, no matter what personality you have, if you're an extrovert or an introvert, or if you're like me, I consider myself an ambivert. One of the single best things you can do is to make time to plan. It's so easy to feel like planning is just a waste of your time or gets pushed to the bottom. Again, that tyranny of the urgent, when you're pulled into a lot of different directions, especially at year end. There's a lot going on right now from now to the end of the year and beyond. And it's really key, right? That planning time, making sure that you're able to get that in, and now, even earlier than now, to plan through what the rest of this year is going to look like. So to set a consistent foundation, let's talk about the elements that we believe are critical in communicating your plan or in your communication planning. So it should be personalized, right? Depending on your caseload for major gifts, you're personalizing your plan for every single donor on your caseload. And for mid-level, you've got a much larger caseload and you're personalizing by tier, with really that additional attention and personalization really happening for your tier A, your top tier donors. And that communication should be relevant, should be what the donor cares about. What do we know about them and their interests and their passions? Not just what we want to communicate, but what do they want to hear about from us? And this is especially important at year end when we know, just like all of us, our inboxes are flooded with information and we're getting it from all sides. So how do we really hone in on that really relevant communication? And then your overall plan needs to have a good cycle. Are you really thinking through your process of thanking the donor and reporting on impact, and then also speaking to the problem that your donor is most passionate about, that you and your organization are working hard to solve? Again, the most important hack for planning is to block time on your calendar. Raise your hand if you do this. I do this. I love to do it. I use Google calendars and I can color code my calendar, but it's so important to put, I see that hand, Judy. Using that time blocking is so important, right? You just put that on your calendar. You treat it like a meeting with yourself, just like you would with a donor, with your boss. And sometimes it does need to be rescheduled, but make sure you put that back on your calendar when it does, because it's really critical. You can also spend your time pre-selecting the resources that you want to really pay attention to and set inbox rules. If you haven't done that for yourself, most email platforms will allow you to set rules. So in Gmail, for instance, you can determine, everything that's coming from Jeff, I want to make sure that falls into this box so I can come back and read it later. So use those tools.
Wait, what do you mean read it later?
I mean, read it immediately. Read it immediately and reference it for later, right? But sometimes if you have newsletters or other things that are giving you really important information, you may not have time to read it right in the moment, but you want to put it in a place where you can find it, but it doesn't clog up your inbox and keep you from feeling like you can't move on.
Yeah.
And if this is a tool I used for myself so often in so many different ways. So if you hear or see something or see a note or find a website or see an article, something that triggers your interest that you want to dig a little deeper into, send yourself a note. I use Slack and I send myself a DM on my own Slack channel and say, hey, look at this or check this out, or send myself a link. And then when I have time, I can go back and revisit that later.
I like that.
Yeah, it's, pretty important for me. Just as the days get busy, you can lose track. And where was that? What was I going to look into? So again, let's think about these additional resources, not just as ways to, set yourself up for understanding what's happening in your own organization, but to really connect with your donors in a deeper way. So you might be getting things from your organization, communication pieces, newsletters, announcements, celebrations. I'll give you a really good example of something that came out with a client that I work with. They were working with a donor who was funding a particular area of their work. It happened to be in public media. And in that case, that area of work started receiving a lot of national attention, some awards. That reporter received some awards. So instead of waiting until the end, when that fundraiser was reporting back to that donor, she just quickly sent that out, right? So that was a piece of communication that she flagged. Hey, we've received this award, and she was able to send that right out and use that as a touch point. Certainly your organization's social media posts are a great, mine for you to, dig into and reuse in your communication with your donors. LinkedIn. Are you on LinkedIn and checking out what's happening with your donors? Are you connected to your donors there and the companies that they work for? I think that's a really important piece. And then Smart Brief. We're going to look at this in the next slide. But Smart Brief is a great way to subscribe to newsletters on a variety of topics. And again, you would want to set a rule in your inbox so that this would go into a folder that you could read when you have time, but you can choose industries that make sense for the work that you do, but also choose those industries that are important to your donors, right? Where are they working? What are they caring about? What's going on for them? So that just as you would build a relationship with a friend, you're building those common interests that you can talk about with your donors that really humanize the relationship. We're human, they're human. We want to get to that level with them. So use Smart Brief as a way to find some additional information. Let's look at a few additional resources. Obviously Google Alerts. If you haven't set Google Alerts for your organization and for those companies that your top donors work for their name, so that you can see if your donor is getting, recognized in the communities for some amazing thing that they're doing, you want to see that so that you can reach out and say, hey, I saw you in the news, or I saw your company in the news, and really make that connection on a personal level, all kinds of ways to get that additional news coming right into your inbox through Apple News or local business journals.
Mhm.
All right. One more resource we want to share with you is the business journal. If you haven't checked this out, this was fairly new to me recently. Been looking at that, and it's another great way to subscribe to look at lists in your area or in industry specific information that you can see, and again, connect with that donor around what's important to them, right? You know that the work that your organization does is important to them, but what else is important to them and what should you know about so that you can build that rapport and relationship and really dig in. All right, just a few more. If you didn't have enough already, NPR is a great
Great.
right? NPR is so great. They've got so much information. There's Morning Edition, there's All Things Considered, all kinds of information out there just at your fingertips that you can share. And it might be on the topic. So if you're working in affordable housing or you're working in food security, there are always conversations around those topics that you can share. Hey, I heard this and I know you care about this part of our work. I wanted you to see what's being talked about in the national news. Chronicle of Philanthropy for sure. Philanthropy Today is a free resource through the Chronicle. And then think tanks like the Pew Trust are really great resources as well. And this is just a quick snapshot. So on Pew Trust, you can subscribe to a variety of newsletters on all different topics. Again, this can feel like overload, just thinking through all the different resources, but pick out one or two that you think are really important and let them help you build your resources so that you're not going to search for those in the moment.
Well, this is great for you as the fundraiser. Once you understand the donor's passions and interests, and they're not all related to everything you're doing at the organization, right? And so if you find out that they're interested in something about the environment, a specific aspect, go to the Pew Trust, find out where that area is and start learning about it. And then you can send these little touch points to your donors around these issues. I think it's fantastic.
You bet. And, Jeff, don't forget about those internal resources. I think that is something that we sometimes forget about, right? We're so busy looking around at what else is out there, but you've got direct mail. Again, we talked about social media, the marketing materials that your comms team is working so hard to develop, and then any blogs and articles, especially when your organization is mentioned by someone outside of the organization. Those are all great resources. Let's talk a little bit about working with your program team. This can be tricky and wonderful all at the same time. So think about your program team. They are busy doing this incredible work alongside you, and they want to help you tell those stories, but they need to know from you what you really need. So talk to your program team early, because just like you, they have a laundry list of things that they're trying to get through. They have things they're responsible to do. So make sure you talk to them early about things that they're doing that might be really off the radar, right? That the insiders need to know about. How can you help tell those stories? But remember, they're so busy. So you want to reach out early. You want to tell them what your deadline is, and you want to make really specific requests. I'm talking to this donor who cares specifically about this part of our work. What's happening there? What can I share with them that they maybe haven't seen in other places? And I'll tell you this one key tip. Don't forget to report back to your program team. When you've had a great opportunity to share their work with a donor and the donor comes alive and wants to know more and is leaning in, make sure that you tell that program team about how great that went and how the information that they shared with you was a part of that win, because they need to feel that what they're doing on top of their regular work to help support your side is working, right? They want to feel that win too.
Exactly. We're regularly hearing from some great creative ideas from our clients and Academy participants about new systems they're using, ideas that are working particularly well, and efficiencies they are finding. The goal here is to ask yourself what problem you're trying to solve for yourself. You might hear an idea that sounds great, but it isn't addressing the challenge you're facing. You can always refer back to one of these ideas later on, but try to focus on the solutions that best support you. When personalized thank you videos got traction during the pandemic, we were completely on board. Many of our clients are continuing to use this as a simple and unique way to thank donors. And these are a great alternative to a handwritten note and could also be paired with an impact report. Here are just a few of the systems we've heard about use: Gravitive, ThankView, CauseVid, Bonjoro. These are all great ways, great systems to use in sending personal videos out to donors or even internally to staff people to report back. People love video. One CEO has a client in a swing state where they are getting a lot of political phone calls, and they recommended the fundraiser reach out by email first to let donors know that they're calling. And because of that, it's greatly improved the response. So you know how it is. You get all these phone calls, robocalls or whatever, and no one wants to answer the phone. So by announcing, hey, just so you know, I'm not the political person. I'm going to be calling you. Please look out for my number. And I'd love to be able to talk to you is a great way to get in touch with donors. And then check your mailbox soon messages to donors if there is a match campaign, proposal, or other appeal coming that has helped fundraisers. They really can connect more promptly with donors. And many fundraisers are reminding donors they can use their DAF, donor advised funds, to give, but they need to start that process early. Now, one of our favorite time savers is the mail merge. It can really speed things up when you're in qualification process, which many of you might be doing right now. You can also use this process to send mass emails. We have a video walking you through that that Caitlin can share. And please email us at hello@veritasgroup.com and we'll get that to you. So ask hello@veritas.com and ask for the video to walk you through this. Lastly, there are many ways even the least tech-savvy person on this call can use Excel to save some time and be more efficient. Some of my favorite easy Excel solutions are hyperlinks to the donor through the ID, filters, and using it for planning the next personalized merge that you're going to do. A tip of one of our coaches shared is in a month where you're planning on making an ask, start the monthly plan touch point column with ask $XX details. Then you can sort on the monthly touches, and all of the asks you will go right to the top, particularly since you're likely to have ask in November, but the goals are in December. AI can also be very beneficial and time-saving, but you need to make sure you're being safe about it. Avoid putting any personal donor information into an AI system. That includes all AI note takers on calls. Do use it for creating templates, figuring out the right wording for an email, and to give you a head start on writing. This is a very busy time of year, as we all know, and your donors are getting a lot of communication right now. So if you're thinking of a particular piece of contact, ask yourself if it's relevant, meaningful, and useful. If not, don't send it. Keep communication valuable to the donors so that it has a positive impact.
That's so good, Jeff. You know, one of the things that we really have to talk about today is boundaries, right? We couldn't do this presentation without speaking about boundaries and addressing your own needs for self-care. The goal with finding any efficiencies or using hacks is to help reduce your stress and work in a more productive cycle so you can use your energy more wisely. You know, it's not so you can do more and, you know, burn yourself out faster. It's about really pushing that critical work to the top. But you can only do that when you have the appropriate boundaries in place and know what is your most important work, and also learning how to say no, which can be really hard for fundraisers in particular. Saying no or removing one thing from your list, right? Saying no. You've heard many times you can't pour from an empty cup, or I've heard it said, for every yes you say, you're saying no to something else. And so what are we saying yes to, and what can we say no to allow us to say yes to the right things? Saying no really allows you to remain focused on the right priorities. And for fundraisers, that's managing their caseload and working with their donors. That's their highest value work. Anything else is taking away from the most important part of your work. And so having those boundaries creates space for you to fill that cup. And if you're depleted, it's a guarantee that you're going to be less productive and efficient. So let's reframe that no. Our society in general, and I think fundraisers and nonprofit folks in particular, are really not good at appreciating and valuing the no. But the reality is that people are not nearly as offended when we say no as we think they are. We build this story in our head. Well, if I say no, I'm going to disappoint, right? But it's really a gift. And to say it's a gift to you and it's a gift to those that you work with, because then you're allowing yourself to, again, fill that cup, be more productive, and do the work that's most critical for you to do. And when you set those clear boundaries, you ensure that you're being cared for and everyone benefits from that. So I'm going to give you a little homework today, and you can do it right now if you want, but I want you to think about one thing you can say no to today. I used to follow someone who said, every Thursday, think about one thing that you can quit, right? What can you quit on a Thursday? So think about one thing. It can be anything, something big or small, but something that you can remove from your list that is not a top priority. If you need help doing this, you can create a list where you identify all the tasks on your list and put them into categories, right? What is urgent and important, right? That's my most important work. What's non-urgent but important? What's urgent but not important? And then what's non-urgent and not important? Those are things that can probably go off your list and be a no, right? Those are using that, an Eisenhower matrix, right? Using those quadrants and really trying to think through, and then talk to your supervisor to have some help around how do I really prioritize my most important work. So just to summarize here what we've talked about today, there are 3 things we want you to keep in mind as you consider these hacks and tips. First of all, take care of you. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And there's all kinds of research out there about taking breaks and setting boundaries and how that allows you to be even more effective, more efficient, more creative, all the things I know you want to be. Take from today's presentation what will work for you. Not everything that we've talked about here today is going to be a fit for you. Take what will work and use that and make sure it's a good fit. And as I said earlier, just pick 1 or 2 things to start with. Don't try to hit everything on our list. We gave you lots of resources and lots of hacks to think about. Pick 1 or 2, focus on those, allow them to get into the rhythm of your work, and then you can add more as you master those.
Love it. All right, Rebecca, I think this is now a great time for questions.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for all of that great content. And as a reminder, everyone, you can go ahead and put questions in the Q&A box if there's anything that you want us to answer about the tips and hacks today, about year end in general. We did have one question, Jeff, if you don't mind going back to the Excel tip slide. We will be sending a copy of the slide deck out to everybody and a recording that's coming tomorrow. So you are going to have all of this for reference. But there was a quick question of getting a chance to look at that one again. And wanted to also, just while people are gathering their questions, and I have a resource I'm going to pop into the chat here in a minute. But I know, Kendra, you're working with clients every day and obviously in touch with our CELs, and was just curious if there were any things that maybe had come up just this week in some of your conversations, or things that maybe your clients are trying out that you would want to share beyond what we showed today.
I'm trying to think if there's anything that's popped up recently. The main thing, as we talked about, is just that time for planning and starting early to plan. We all know what end of year looks like for the nonprofit sector, for fundraisers. It's just jam-packed, right? This is the key time that donors want to connect with you and you want to connect with them. So how do we really build that out earlier and start earlier? And it's really hard when you're wearing lots of hats, especially if you're a shop of one, and I've been there. it's tough to try to decide. So starting with that priority list and having someone help you look at your list and say, okay, here's what I think are my top priorities. If it's your supervisor or a colleague, how can I really push the things to the top, and where do I need to say no? And again, let's go back to that no, because that is so important. And I've been said no to when I've asked others if they could help me with something, and I am not one bit offended if they say, no, I can't do that right now. I've got all these other things I have to prioritize. So be sure to use that as a tool.
Well, look at you, Miss Self-Assured. I
I
mean,
love it.
I think you know, everyone, you talk to so many fundraisers and you just talk to friends. It's just an overwhelming time because there's so many things going on at this time of year, besides this being the biggest fundraising part of our year. And so I think you're right, Kendra, having the time to plan, but actually having a plan so that you have that structure. And in November and December, when it really starts to heat up, having that plan and knowing what you're going to be doing that day is freeing for you rather than, you know, what am I going to do? You just run from one thing to the next. You actually have a plan. You have your to-do list. You have your who you're meeting with. All of that is planned out for you. If you can do that, that will help so much and relieve a lot of stress in November and December.
You bet. One thing I thought in addition, if you don't mind, I'll jump back in and just say internal meetings really have become a huge part of our day, and they fill up a lot of our time. So you might think about and talk to your leadership about limiting those internal meetings during October, November, and December so that again frees you up. Just one more little hack to throw out there.
That's great. A great reminder. And I did want to mention, I put a link for our fall and year-end planning guide in the chat. This is a free resource available on our website. So just like Jeff was saying, having a plan, and what Kendra was saying as well, having that plan is really helpful. I know if you're in a situation where you're like, well, great, it's already mid-October and I don't necessarily have a full plan, or I'm a little bit behind on that, this guide can just really help you in figuring out what your priorities are. And, a lot of what we talk about in this guide and elsewhere is, if you're going to start somewhere, start with your people that this is their normal giving time of year, which might be a large portion of your list or might not be as large as you think it is. And then also look at goal variances, who gave around this time last year but hasn't given yet, and just take a look at that. There's some more tips in that guide, but that's a good place to start. We did have a comment just about how the boundaries section, and I definitely get this because there's a certain amount of challenge with boundaries, especially when maybe your leadership or your board is not really supportive of that, or isn't maybe in alignment with what you're trying to do. And so I don't know if either of you have any tips for somebody who might be in that situation.
Jeff. I can talk through this. That's a real life example, right? Our boards, they love our work, they love our missions, and they are leaning in, and that is a gift. At times, it can feel a little bit like an overreach when there's a lot of direction into your day-to-day work and what that looks like. And so I think being able to, even if it's hard, even if it feels awkward, even if it feels challenging, talking with your supervisors, your CEO, or your executive director to say, how can we have a healthy conversation with our board about what it looks like, what our days look like? I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what fundraisers do and how we do it, that we're out and about doing all these fun things, going to dinners and, lunches with our donors, but they don't get the real picture. And that's partly on us. We need to tell them the real picture of what it takes to get to that point with the donor, all of the work behind the scenes that allows us to deepen those relationships. And so telling those stories and painting the full picture for a board member may help them understand when you need to set boundaries. And when they don't understand, I think really leaning into your leadership to help support you and having those honest conversations. And it may not always be easy, but really important.
I agree. I think every development director of every nonprofit should really have one-on-one conversations with every board member to give them a full picture of what they do and all what their staff does, and that they really understand it. Because if you can do that and have a real personal relationship with every one of them, it will solve a lot of their problems of not understanding what you do. Because really, most boards really don't get all the ins and outs of what's happening in development. They have ideas, but they don't know what it's like. And it's really up to you as the development leader to show them what that is. And part of that is getting together with them and having those one-on-one discussions with them about what you do. Besides the things that you would do at a board meeting explaining, having that personal relationship will be so helpful to you and the team that you're managing.
Absolutely. Those are great tips. So we did also have a question from Kim about, when you're thinking about planning and you're trying to be efficient with your time, how do you know it's time to take a responsive donor off of your caseload, and when do we recommend doing that? And Kendra, I'll give that to you to start, and then Jeff can jump in.
Did you say a responsive or non-responsive donor?
Non-responsive donor.
To clarify there. So, if it's for a major, let's assume this is a major gift program or major gift donor. There's a lot of things that we walk through in terms of how we qualify a donor and make sure they're qualified to be on your caseload. And so at some point in that process, whether it's at the very end of the process, we may determine that that donor does not really want to lean in, they don't want to engage. And this is something we talk about a lot at Veritas. We can spend a lot of time chasing donors that they may care about our organization, they may even be giving to our organization, but they may not have the interest in just having that personal communication and engagement. And that's okay, right? We want to honor the intent and the preferences of our donors. There, I will guarantee you there are a whole host of other donors who do want that. And so how do we laser in and find those donors that are truly qualified for your caseload, and move off those donors that really don't want that communication, or in this case are not responding to you? If they, over time, you've tried several different methods to try to reach out to them, you've emailed, you've called, you've sent something in the mail, you've tried a survey, all of the pieces that we talk about in our qualification process, at some point at the end of that, hey, I've tried to get in touch with you, really care, would love to get to know you. Here's my information if you ever would like to reach out to me. And then you move them off your caseload. And they might come back at some point, and it's not unheard of. In fact, it's common to hear that the donor's been getting all of that information that you've been sending. They just haven't had the time or taken the time to respond. And maybe a year and a half or even 2 years later, they come back and say, oh, I got your cards and I wanted to reach out. I'm ready to talk.
Good. Yeah,
Anything to add?
I
Mhm.
think I would just say, yeah, for donors that that are qualified in your portfolio already, that you should look at scanning that whole file of 150 donors twice a year. February, because then things don't get closed until mid or late January. So probably the beginning of February is a good time to look at your portfolio again to decide, is every donor in here, should they be in this portfolio? Because if you're good major gift officer, you also have donors that are like waiting at the doorstep, right? And so that's a good time. And then also in the summer, in July, I would also look at your portfolio and kind of just do a recheck. And if some donors need to come off, then others can come in that are more productive for you. So those are 2 times a year that we usually will recommend looking at the portfolio.
Absolutely. And I think I'll just add one other piece to be thinking about with that is, a lot of times our donors aren't responsive to us because they haven't heard that they're making any impact on their gift, or they haven't been properly thanked or told what their gift is doing. And so this is a great time of year to do that. You're nearing the end of the calendar year, which, regardless of your fiscal year, most donors are thinking on the calendar year. And so you can use this opportunity to really look and kind of look at that donor and think or see, did we ever tell them what their gift was doing? Did we show them that it was making an impact? Have they been properly thanked for past giving? And start there. Or if they do, you do have somebody who's maybe not responsive but gives at your end, maybe through a direct response mailing, make sure that you're thanking them promptly and potentially using that as an opportunity to connect and engage with them. So there are some factors that usually impact a donor's responsiveness to us. And so also taking a little bit of time to look at those can be beneficial.
Yep.
All right. Well, we don't have a ton of questions from this group, it seems, today. So I'm going to give everyone another minute or two just to pop any questions in and any final thoughts, Jeff and Kendra. And if there are no other questions, then we'll wrap up and let everyone move on with their day.
Well, I would just say as a final thought, everything that we talked about today was to help you be more effective and efficient with your time in order for you to have less stress, to not burn out, and actually enjoy this period of time, right? Because this is a time that you are connecting with donors at an unbelievable rate, and this is the time of year donors are the most generous, and so what comes out of that is all kinds of joy, and so you get to be part of that. And hopefully you'll have some time to step back and just think about that. And I know you're really busy and you're trying to work your plan, but if you can just stop for a bit and understand what is happening here. Your donors are giving something that they've worked really hard for, their money, and giving it away to your organization because they want to make a difference in the world. They want to see impact happening. They want to be able to help change the world. And you're helping them do that. And that's a really special thing. So hopefully you'll have some time during this busy period to just step back and think about that and how important your role is between the donor and some of the world's greatest needs. And I think it's pretty cool.
That's so good.
All right. We did have a quick question, and Jeff and Kendra, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on this, or if this is one that we'll just maybe have to take back and respond to separately. But we had a question just about end of year tax efficient strategies, specifically around appreciated assets. And I know sometimes some of that can land in plan giving world, which is not our main area of focus. I don't know if there's anything that you have to add. And Leslie, if not, we'll go back to some of our experts in team and see if they have any additional thoughts to get back to you.
I don't have anything right here, but definitely we should take that question. And that's a great question for Bob.
Yes. Yeah. Bob is our plan giving expert. So I will reach out and make sure that I get that to you, Leslie. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. We will, like I've said, send out a slide deck copy and a recording so that you have all of this information to refer back to. You can look at those slides in more detail if you want to revisit any of them. All of that will be sent to you tomorrow. We really value your time, especially during such a busy time of year. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing. And we hope that you all have a wonderful and successful year end. Thank you so much.